So I have The Boss Baby, which is an animated film, and I am so sorry to say that if you're over the age of 8, you're probably not going to have a great time at this.
Oh.
Yeah, it stars Alec Baldwin as the voice of an animated boss baby who's basically a spy. I was trying to write the plot out to talk about it, and I just gave up because it's very convoluted. And considering it's supposed to be basically a kid's movie, it's based on a kid's book. I don't know how they stretched it into 90 minutes or whatever it was, but it did not do a great job of that. There are some great sequences in it. You know, there's a couple moments to enjoy. They do some really fun stuff inside the mind of one of the older kids' imaginations. And if you have a sibling, there are moments of it that resonate with you because it's all about this dynamic of this baby just shows up. Again, the plot is just so confusing. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I need to stop talking about that. But overall, I just felt like it was really trying too hard. And I'm sorry to say that because I know the amount of work that goes into an animated film. Like, they take so long to make. I know people who worked on it. I'm sorry, everyone. And I thought it had potential. And again, because it did show these sequences of really interesting stuff, I just think they picked source material that wasn't going to do a great job stretching into this long. So if you're a parent who is considering taking your kids, just be prepared that this might be a more painful experience for you than it is for them.
I love that. So what are you going to give it?
I'm going to give it a 2, and that is being generous out of guilt, personal guilt. Also, like, in the moment, I didn't mind it as much, but the more I thought about it, I was like, what happened here? What did I just watch?
It looks so cute, too. And Alec Baldwin is the boss baby. He has a great voice.
He does, and it's so weird hearing his voice, which is probably like the epitome of grown-up man voice, come out of this tiny baby character. And they do a lot of interesting stuff with sort of cartoony animation in these rigs, and to get technical, you know, it's hard when something has short limbs like a baby does to make it cartoony and stretchy and squashy, but they definitely did a good job with that. It's just, for me, the story overall was a bit of a challenge.
Okay, Dana, what else do you have for us today?
There's also The Zookeeper's Wife, which is a World War II Holocaust film starring Jessica Chastain. So really a peppy weekend at the box office.
I guess so.
It's based on true events. She plays Antonia Zabinski, who was a zookeeper's wife. Pretty self-explanatory there. She was at the Warsaw Zoo. I feel like we get 2 types of World War II films. You get your Schindler's List and you get your Saving Private Ryan's, right? You're either a battlefield film or you're more of the slow, dramatic people stories. And this is definitely a Schindler's List type story. And it is interesting, right? Because it was real. And it's surprising that these stories keep coming to light and we keep telling these stories and we keep not obsessing, but we are still very interested in that time, rightfully so.
Yeah.
But you hear these humanitarian stories and they're touching. I really admire Jessica Chastain. I think she's a great actress. The subject matter itself is, of course, very moving. So basically, she and her husband lived in the Warsaw Zoo, in like the housing there, and he was one of the head zookeepers. And as the Jews in Poland were put into concentration camps, eventually they started sneaking them out. So they didn't have to. You know, it was one of those like, hey, these are people doing like what's right because it's right. It started with their friends, and they had been put in, in the ghettos. They'd been put in the ghettos, and they got their friends out, and then they realized, you know what, we could help other people. So it's great to see a story like that told. The thing that was a little frustrating for me is that for some reason there just felt like there was a barrier. You know, there's the inherent emotional connection because, you know, I'm Jewish. It's something that's affected my family, and you know, the timing of the story itself, like the movie, is relevant, right? I feel like we're dealing with people being isolated based on religion or gender or, you know, nationality. So it definitely had that going for it, but there was just sort of an emotional disconnect, which I found kind of disappointing given like the talent of the actress, the source material, all of that. You know, I was upset at points, but it wasn't necessarily, it was just because I was upset about World War II and the Holocaust. You know, it wasn't necessarily because of what was being shown on screen at that moment. You know, it's interesting because the director is Nikki Caro, and she's currently slated to direct the live-action Mulan. One, we know how I feel about Disney live-action remakes. But I was almost a little scared because I was like, hey, this is a film with a strong female protagonist, right? Like, the story is Antonia's story. Mulan's story is Mulan's story. And, like, I didn't know how I felt about these, like, strong female characters being in her hands. So it had to be a little scared for that. It's a 2.3. It's a 2.3.
2.3. 2.3 Mohawks is how you're going to rate that film, The Zookeeper's Wife. So neither of them sound that great. You got another one for us, though, don't you?
Yes, this is the big one this weekend. This is an interesting weekend, and it's Ghost in the Shell. This one is really, Brian's making a face. This one's really tough for me to talk about.
Isn't it based on, you know, the graphic novels?
Yes,
and
it's
the cartoons?
It's based on a Japanese manga that got made into a film, and it's about a human brain. So that's the ghost of a person that's been transferred into a robot body. The shell takes place in Japan. And the original story, I think, really resonated with people because it's very reflective of Japan's burgeoning industrialization when it came out, right? Like, Japan just went from being a country that was was, kind of set back a little bit by World War II and to this technological giant. And so I think at the time that the manga and everything came out, it was really reflective of that. And it's very key to the Japanese culture, right? Like that's such an important part of it. Now, here's where I get really, really angry. So if this was a story that took place, and it was key that it took place in, let's say, Kenya, right? And Hollywood went, you know what? We are so sorry, but there aren't any black actors who have enough star power to lead this film. And I say black, not Kenyan, because in these cases, right, when you're making a movie, suddenly ethnic groups are defined by how you look and not where you're from. Like, it doesn't matter where you're from if you kind of look like that. And Hollywood has this horrible history of being like, it doesn't matter, but you kind of look like that. Like, it's fine.
Like Al Pacino and Scarface, for example.
Scarface, right. It's like, it doesn't seem like a big deal to other people, but when it's your group being represented or misrepresented, it gets really upsetting. So if they'd done that with like a black actor, people would be up in arms, right? People would just be furious. So why is it when this happens to a role that's about Asian culture or an Asian actor, people aren't boycotting it? Like, why are people going to go see this movie? And it makes me really frustrated. Honestly, there are more Asian people than anyone else on Earth. Like, we are the majority when it comes down to it.
Literally. And it's Scarlett Johansson playing the lead.
Right. So she plays the major. And I was like, okay, I get it. She looks like what probably a dude scientists would dream up if they're like, I'm going to build the perfect cyborg body, right? I was like, all right, respect ScarJo. You look great. You're wearing pretty much nothing in this, but it's like a body mech suit type thing, right? So it's like not super sexualized. I was like, I get why they're doing that, and we've seen her play similar roles, but it was the perfect opportunity to cast an Asian actor. It was the perfect opportunity. And anyone who uses the argument, well, there's no big enough names, well, you're part of the problem then, right? Because if you won't give actors the roles that get them to that star level in the first place, like, how are we ever supposed to rise to the top? Like, Asian actors make up 1% of the leading Hollywood roles. That's 1%. Wow. We are the majority on Earth. Our actors are 1%.
Also, there's a lot of Asian actors out there, especially if you go outside of the U.S.
Yes.
So you can't tell me there's not talented actors out there that could have done this film.
Exactly.
Easily.
And so that's why it's so frustrating, because I really just can't stress how much representation matters and how frustrating it's grow up seeing nobody who looks like you on screen, right? Like, nobody, or if you do, they're a stereotype. Like, they are just a gross generalization.
Right, which is what they showed on John Oliver that time. They did like literally a thing about Hollywood and how they'd never given Asian people the opportunity to do film, so it was always someone else, and they were trying to make their eyes.
Right, so it's weird because it's a part of the conversation, but nobody is like doing anything about it. Like, I was sitting there the whole time, I was like, why would the Japanese fictional characters in this build a not Japanese looking robot, right? Like, if I was building a robot, it'd probably look a little bit like me. It's just one of those inherent like biased things that you would. Why would you make something that doesn't look like you? Except for to make it alien and weird. So I know that my personal experience with this made it impossible for me to watch this movie. I was sitting there and I was trying to evaluate it. I was like, yeah, there's some like interesting CG. And ironically, like, just looking at it from a film history perspective, the original anime like inspired a lot of things, very Matrix-y, like it didn't inspire Westworld, but like current Westworld probably stole a little bit from it. So now seeing it again, you're like, okay, well, this has been done before. Like, this has already been like tread over territory. So seeing it in live action, even though it's all computer generated, which is just a form of animation, is whatever. But I just sat there and I was just so upset the whole time and like frustrated and just sad. Like, I was just sad. And I was kind of like upset at the other people around me who weren't sad about this.
Is there any redeeming value in this film at all?
I don't think so. I really don't, because I'm like, this is a beautiful giant Hollywood package that, the story needs work. I've never seen the original. I'm going to cop to it. I've never seen the original, so I don't know how it translated from the original source material to this version of it. I also, we know I'm not a huge fan of remakes, so that's its own thing. But I just did not find any redeeming value in it because of this huge opportunity that they had to elevate someone. And I would love to see someone who looks somewhat like me on screen in a starring role that has nothing to do with them being Asian. Like, that shouldn't be so much to ask, right?
Nope.
So this is going to be the first time I can't review this film. I have to refrain from reviewing this film because I personally would give it a negative score because I had such a negative experience.
Well, I'd like you to say 0.
But this is the thing, right?
It's worse than 0?
Well, as a film, if it had an Asian actor in it, like, I maybe would have had a different conversation, right? Like, I'd be able to look at it as just a film. But because of this whole thing around it, like, I had a negative personal experience. But I also know that that's because I'm half Asian. So that also puts me in a minority there, right? Like, I'm not completely. But it's like, okay, well, at the end of the day, you look like me. It's like, I want someone who I can relate to on that level. Like, we're such visual creatures. it's tough not to ever see that. I'm not saying it always has to be, but I'm just like, I never get to see that. So I am not going to give it a score. But I'm trying to be like aware enough to know that, look, there are going to be people who really like this movie, and that's on them. But I really hope they join the larger conversation on why people do have a problem with this movie.
Dana, I want to say thank you. On that note, I don't think I'll be seeing Ghost in the Shell. Because I wouldn't want to upset you. And you know what? I've seen the original animated stuff that was